And with another 4 Nights of the Apocalypse manga chapter review. And in all honesty, this arc currently has been nothing but non-stop greatness. I have been liking the new world building for the sequel series, as well as set up for not just this arc, but also potentially what could be the end goal of the series. And this chapter honestly makes me think that things might actually accelerate quite quickly, at least for the first portion of the story. And I am honestly all for it, because with everything that we have been introduced with, I can tell that Nakaba is not planning on making this like a bit of a slow burn, similar to how the 7 Deadly Sins first was, considering that it took a couple hundred chapters to get at least 5 of the sins altogether for the first major saga of the series to be over with. From here, we're actually getting some really good conflicts, and it really feels like things can be turned up to 11 right off the bat, as well as us seeing basically a glimmer of how strong Ironside can actually be without him really doing anything to the main cast initially, as well as seeing what he's doing with the coffin at this moment. But before we get into the actual video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell for updates on future videos. I am really enjoying making these 4 Nights of the Apocalypse content, and all the 4 Nights reviews are actually doing pretty well on this channel, so I am not going to stop doing this at all. I am also very close to reaching 500 subscribers. At the point of me recording, I'm only 10 away from reaching 500, so please do everything you can to help me reach the 500 mark. Once that's done, I'll make an announcement video of what I'm planning to do with the channel from this point onward, as well as address a few things from what I was doing with the channel before I rebranded and started doing these manga reviews. And also, if you haven't checked already, I did a theory video for the 7 Deadly Sins and the 4 Nights of the Apocalypse, right on the top left corner up there, talking about how the 7 Deadly Sins could potentially die in this sequel series with everything that has been given to us thus far. Obviously, everything's up to like chapter 14, 15, but nothing really changes at this point to give us an idea of this completely disproving the theory that I have presented. It's honestly a pretty nice theory for my very first theory video on this channel, and while I do see it to be eventually disproven, I'm still pretty happy with how it turned out, and it's been doing not that bad. But yeah, without further ado, let's get on with the video. In the last chapter, the main group actually witnesses Ironside trying to get the aid of the town of Sistana to look for the final piece of the Coffin of Eternal Darkness that they themselves had found earlier in this arc, claiming that it will be used to protect the town from an oncoming disaster, most likely caused by their enemies, from how it's being told, Leonis, and is essentially trying to find this for some other purpose. An confronts him and basically says that she knows that he is lying and is not telling the truth to anybody. No one obviously believes her, even her own father, and Ironside knows the dangers of someone that could actually see through deceit, and honestly wants to, from what we saw, might want to get rid of her, or at least silence her for the time being, since her abilities can be done with, honestly, used to make trouble for him. But, in all honesty, what happens next? Percival runs down, grabs on, and books it, as Sin, Donnie, and Nazians try and go get the relic from the inn that they were previously at. They then witness the maid that was with An steal the relic from that inn, as it turned out to be a familiar, most likely to Ironside, that was looking for the relic and keeping an eye on An in case she herself actually did possess or hid this relic. And then Percival and the group meet up, and they all come up with a plan to take down Ironside, as he is planning to use all the members of this town as sacrifices to activate the seal. And now we start off with this chapter. Chapter 17, Confrontation with Evil. And I'm sorry that recap took longer than usual. But anyway, we start this chapter off with Sin trying to tell the main group that they have to stop Ironside's ritual right now, because they literally have no time to spare, and that they have to stop him. An is looking intently at Sin and sees like a little dark cloud over him. This is basically what she sees whenever someone is lying or hiding something due to her magical power. Sin then turns to Percival and says, "Don't you dare try to seriously fight Ironside. No matter how strong he is, just assume he's 10 times what he thinks. As Percival honestly just says okay, basically embarrassingly agreeing with Sin, as he still doesn't know how strong Ironside is. So they all split up, with Percival on Donnie and Nazian going to try and stop the ritual from Ironside's side. Sin goes off to do something. And I do like how Nazian and Donnie are literally just chewing out Percival, just running off like that for literally scaring them half to death after being told not to interact or go against Ironside. As An literally just says, nobody asked for your help, and then just says, thank you anyway. She then formally introduces herself, and Percival introduces himself and the others. Percival then asks why Ironside was at her place, and An just says that he knew her father when they were young, and says that she can't believe that he is actually planning to sacrifice the entire town, and that he's more dangerous than he had imagined. Then asks how they know him at all, as Donnie doesn't really say us, more like Percival, as Percival literally just said flat out that he just took his grandfather out. As she's sorry about that, saying how awful it is, and even really, this is actually kind of funny, but also kind of, scummy, even though she doesn't really realize it. She literally just says, to think he would ask me to marry his son. And that kid is probably just as bad as he is, without realizing that she literally just insulted Percival to his face. But Percival obviously doesn't really mind that or care at all. We then cut to Ironside, who is chanting the spell to release the seal of the Coffin of Eternal Darkness. Now, one quick thing that I was kind of questioning, and this is actually something that was brought up as I was going back through the 7 Deadly Sins during an annual rewatch, is that Fraudrin, when he basically killed everyone in Danafall, and even Liz, he was trying to break the seal. But that was an entire kingdom's worth of people that he was planning to sacrifice their blood to open the Coffin of Eternal Darkness. Ironside is trying to sacrifice an entire town. I don't think this would be enough to break the seal, but possibly create the seal. But if that's so, if it's just human lives, it might be a temporary seal or something. I'm honestly not too sure how this is going to be working. Though I am curious to see how this plans out, because it does seem like Ironside is very well intent to open up the coffin. But yeah, the wording here is honestly pretty interesting, because in this chant, "O binding embrace and binding kiss, to seal them away once more, I offer their blood and soul to the coffin." Now that is an interesting point of phrase, because what is he planning to seal? Because he said seal once more. So could he be talking about the demons? But from what Donnie has said, demons had not been seen for 16 years in Britannia. So he might actually be talking about the other races. We're not entirely sure. But anyway, as he's saying this, he states, "Come to me, O chaotic dead, pour the blood of their sacrifice into the coffin of eternal darkness," as a circle of seemingly dark energy spews from the ground and goes all over town, basically shifting the entire town, the streets, the buildings, the trees, and statues into grotesque creatures. He is literally creating creatures of chaos. And like we saw in the last arc, these knights were able to turn Ordo into a chaotic beast using a chaos staff. So Ironside, due to how strong and how high up he most likely is, he might actually be able to do this without really needing a chaos staff, and just by chanting a specific spell. Unless that gem that we got a close-up to in his armor, in his left hand, might actually be some sort of chaos relic or something of the like. But anyway, as the townspeople are freaking out and running away from these chaos creatures, Ironside's familiar is right next to him, and he says that thing will basically control and command these chaotic dead. So it's possible that he's using like dead souls and corrupting them with chaos, from what the wording is saying, and to essentially make everyone in the town a sacrifice and to let no one escape. As the main group manages to make their way back to the square, they hear what's going on, and then they turn back. They see that these monsters are coming out of the ground, and realize this is probably what Sin was warning them about on what could actually happen if Ironside got the seal. And as they state the obvious that they're using him to collect the sacrifices and that they have to go help them, Percival says that it is okay, because Sin says he's gonna work something out, and that what they gotta do is to stop Ironside as soon as possible. An says that the fox. An then says she doesn't know who Sin is, but he's lying to him about something, or at least hiding something, as we saw earlier in this chapter with her seeing a dark mist over a portion of his body. So what this could mean, I'm not entirely sure. She then questions that he's actually believing Sin. Percival literally just says, as Percival as he is, that he will. And Donnie literally just says that he doesn't really trust Sin fully either. He's still pretty shady. But if Percival believes him, then he'll believe him too. An shrugs and says they're all so gullible, but whatever. As now, they give chase to try and take on Ironside. The closer they get to the town square, they realize that things are even more messed up than they were, and An even finds her father seemingly unconscious right by the side of where he was before, at the site of where Ironside attacked them. As they then see Ironside still in the center, still chanting that spell. And I like this little ominous looking 2-page spread, as Ironside is addressing Percival in the first real time since he thought he killed him back in chapter 1. Because since they didn't really have an actual conversation, Percival just straight up ignored Ironside when he saved An. But he says, "What do you want this time, Percival?" Like literally an annoyed father being like nagged by a nagging child, which is honestly pretty funny, and also it kind of shows what kind of a person Ironside might be. He says normally he'd want to snuff him right out. He'd want to snuff out his life right here, right now, but he's too busy. But then Ironside literally just says, "Stop the ritual," and then literally he starts to turn back as he says, "And why would you phrase it like that?" And as he looks at them, this intense aura just strikes everyone, and they're all just stricken with fear. With his raw magical power, they literally say that it makes Tulsker, the person that Percival just annihilated in the last arc, look like nothing. And that he literally just turned his back. He even left no openings, from what Nazian is pointing out. An says that they still need to do something, but in her head she knows she's too terrified for her body to move, and that Ironside won't hesitate to kill them the second they make a move. Now, in all honesty, Ironside literally just turning back and just intimidating them with his raw presence is just a straight up Conqueror's hockey move from One Piece. Now, I have gone long enough not mentioning One Piece in any videos I have done so far. At least I believe so. Let me know if I am lying or misremembering. But yeah, literally, what Ironside just did is straight up something a user of Conqueror's hockey would do. And that is just badass, and I love it. Percival literally just jumps up right behind Ironside, says to stop it, and uses his magical power again, creating a giant hand to slam into the ground in order to attempt to try and stop Ironside. Ironside literally just dissipates the attack with the wave of his hand, and without even looking at Percival, points his hand towards him and says, "You need to be taught some discipline," as the chapter ends. Now, this is honestly a really, really great chapter, and I am super hyped, because this is literally a huge setup for Percival to take on Ironside for the first time since chapter 1. I did not expect this to happen so soon, but I am all for it. And honestly, it's doing a really good. Nakaba is doing a really good job at showing us how intimidating and how out of their league the main cast is to Ironside in particular. Now, Percival, he was fighting Pelgar to a certain degree, but Pelgar was holding back because he was just having fun and measuring Percival's fighting potential, so he could potentially train him. So we can assume from the previous interactions between Pelgar and Ironside that Pelgar and Ironside are roughly about the same strength, and if Pelgar is just as strong as Ironside, then Pelgar was just literally holding back the entire time that they fought back in chapters 4 and 5. So Ironside having to use his full power, it would be insanity, and we could assume that he used his full power when he was fighting Bulgus back in chapter 1, and you saw how literally devastating his magical power really is and how strong he is, especially since Bulgus is supposed to be a powerful holy knight, or former Holy Knight. So one can only wonder what Percival is going to do to try and stop this ritual. Because what they all really need to do is think. They can't beat him in a head-on fight or even beat him at all. Like Sin said, their main objective is to grab the entire coffin or just one single piece and book it out of there without Ironside finding or catching up to them. So what could possibly happen is that Percival, with his hero-type magical power, with his hero magic, might actually be able to tank a good chunk of Ironside's attacks, considering that he survived one hit previously in Chapter 1, leaving a permanent scar to him. But now Percival has his magical power, which heals his wounds. Now, he could also protect himself using his magical aura and possibly tank a good chunk of the hit, still taking a massive amount of damage, but healing himself just enough to stay in a fight or to distract Ironside long enough for maybe Nazians or even Donnie or An to grab a piece of the coffin in some way, shape, or form to stop the ritual. But realistically, I don't see how this could possibly end with our heroes winning unless there's some sort of outside intervention. Sin said he had something up his sleeve to probably try and do something to help the town and stop all these chaos creatures. I'm not entirely sure what that could be. He might be a spy from Leonis who was basically sent to gather the Four Knights of the Apocalypse against Camelot, similar to what Ironside said, but just to take down Arthur or something like that as a wall of defense, or to make sure that they don't get killed by the Holy Knights of Camelot. But I'm honestly going with Sin is actually working with Meliodas or even Bon, and maybe he's going to open up some kind of one-time magic portal that he has that he was going to save for an emergency, but is basically going to do something to maybe call a Holy Knight from Leonis, or maybe one of the Sins to show up and save the day. I mean, in a Darkest Hour type of deal, in any kind of sequel series, you have to have one of the previous protagonists show up to actually help the new protagonists in a certain way. That way they'll be able to, grow stronger, know their limits, and have someone there to protect them and guide them. But yeah, that's honestly all my thoughts on Chapter 17 of the Four Knights of the Apocalypse. Another solid chapter, and I love how intimidating Nakaba has made Ironside in this one chapter alone. We knew he was intimidating from Chapter 1 and Chapter, I believe, 5 or 6 when he was talking to Pelgard, and even last chapter to an extent with that one attack without hesitation to take down Percival and An in a single swing. But here, we see just how intimidating he really is, and we could possibly see his true power in this one episode. In the next chapter, I mean. But yeah, with all that said and done, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I want to do more Four Knights content every week, as I have been stating. Again, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so that YouTube's algorithm can continue to suggest my content to a much wider audience to help bring more people in. And again, we're also very close to 500 subscribers at the point of me recording this video. So please, do whatever you can to help me reach that goal, because it will really help me. It'll really help me and give me more motivation to make this content as good as possible. And yeah, without further ado, I hope you all have an awesome day.